The deep dive you're about to go into is going to share with you how the neuroaffective somatics also benefits nervous system regulation and embodiment and how it relates to Taoism. So just listen to the computer generated sounds. They sound like boys and girls, and it's all based on my work.
Welcome back, everyone. Today's deep dive, it's really exciting. We're going to be exploring how ancient Taoist wisdom can be combined with modern neuroaffective somatics.
And it's all about, helping us better manage our energy and emotions.
It's like we're unlocking ancient secrets,
Yeah.
right? But for like a calmer, more balanced us in the modern world.
Yeah. And what I find fascinating is that these sources, they go beyond just like listing techniques. They
Yeah.
really emphasize this interconnectedness of our nervous system and our emotional world.
And even like the energy systems described in traditional Chinese medicine.
Exactly. They're all connected.
Okay, so let's unpack that a little bit. We've got excerpts on neuroaffective somatics, which I'll admit I'm still kind of wrapping my head around. But it's like our brains, they don't exist in isolation, right?
Right. It encourages us to explore the interplay between our thoughts and emotions and physical sensations.
They all affect each other.
They do. They're not separate. They influence each other constantly.
Constantly. Okay, and this is where the Neijing 2 comes in.
Yes.
I'll be honest, when I first saw this intricate diagram, I was like, cool art.
It is beautiful.
But the sources actually suggest it's a really powerful tool.
Yeah.
Especially for those with neurodiversity.
It is. The Neijing too. It's not just a pretty picture. It's a Taoist map of the body's energy systems. And understanding these systems can be, incredibly usable, especially for managing things like ADHD, autism, dyslexia.
Wow, so it's like a roadmap for understanding how energy moves within us.
Yes, exactly.
Now, speaking of energy systems, we can't forget about the tanteens.
Right.
Those energy centers in the body. We've got three main ones, right? I always picture them like, I don't know, like energetic cauldrons or something.
That's a great visualization.
Each with their own like special purpose.
Yeah, the lower dantian, which is nestled in the abdomen, that's often associated with, grounding, stability, that rooted tree-like energy.
Ah, so that's why I feel so much more centered after doing grounding exercises. It's like I'm tapping into my lower dantian without even realizing it.
Exactly.
I love that. What about the other ones?
So then we have the middle dantian, residing in the heart area.
Okay.
And this one is all about our emotional world. Think, empathy, resilience, that warm feeling of connection.
So if the lower dantian is about feeling grounded, the middle dantian is about like navigating the ups and downs of life with an open heart.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I love that. What about the upper dantian?
The upper dantian. Now, this one's located in the head, and it's often associated with intuition, insight, that third-eye wisdom.
That one's always felt kind of mysterious to me, I'll be honest.
It's about connecting to something beyond ourselves,
I like that. Okay, so we've got these three chanteens, these swirling energy centers. But what exactly is this energy that's flowing through them? I know it's called chi, but is it like our life force or something?
Yes, precisely. Qi is often described as vital energy or life force. And it's that animating energy that flows through all living things.
Right.
It's constantly being replenished from external sources, the earth, the cosmos, the air we breathe.
That makes me think about how good it feels to be in nature. It's like I can almost feel the earth's energy like recharging me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But here's the cool part. We don't just passively receive qi.
Right.
The practices that are outlined in these sources, suggest that we can actually cultivate and direct our internal qi.
No, that's empowering.
It is.
But how does this qi actually move around in the body? Does it just wander around aimlessly? Or is there like a system to it?
There's definitely a system.
Okay, good.
In traditional Chinese medicine, qi flows through very specific pathways called meridians. And they're like these intricate networks of rivers, essentially, that nourish every cell in our body.
Okay, so if our meridians are like rivers, I'm guessing they can get blocked, right? What happens then?
Just like a blocked river can cause stagnation, right?
Right.
Blocked meridians can lead to physical or emotional discomfort.
Ah, makes sense.
And that's where practices like the 6 healing sounds can be incredibly helpful.
Okay, the 6 healing sounds. Now, those sound intriguing. Are we talking about like chanting, singing? What is that?
Think of it as using sound vibrations to influence your well-being.
Okay.
Each healing sound corresponds to a specific organ and meridian, and it helps to balance and harmonize their energy.
So it's like giving your organs a sound bath.
Exactly.
I love that.
For example, the sound for the lungs is SSSSSSSS, made on a long exhale, and it's said to help transform grief into courage.
Wow. So
Hmm.
we can actually like shift our emotional state using sound.
Yes.
That's incredible. Are there sounds for other emotions too?
Absolutely. There are sounds to help transform anger into forgiveness, fear into gentleness, even hate into love.
Wow.
Each sound works by releasing stagnant energy and allowing chi to flow more freely.
This is blowing my mind. It's like having an ancient sonic toolkit for emotional balance. I love it. Now, I've also heard about this thing called the organ clock. Is that connected to all of this?
It is. The organ clock is a key concept in traditional Chinese medicine. Right. And it suggests that each organ has a 2-hour peak period
Okay.
within a 24-hour cycle
Okay.
when its energy is at its strongest.
So it's like our organs are taking turns being employee of the hour all day and night.
Yes,
You're
exactly.
like, fascinating.
And this concept is, intricately linked to the meridians and the flow of qi. And by understanding the organ clock, we can gain insights into our own energy patterns and potential imbalances.
This is already so much to digest.
I know, right?
And it feels like we're just getting started. I'm eager to hear more about how these concepts all weave together.
Me too. And there's so much more to explore, including how understanding the 5 elements, another cornerstone of traditional Chinese medicine, can provide a roadmap for even greater balance and well-being.
Okay, 5 elements. This is starting to sound like we're getting into like avatar level wisdom here.
Right.
But before we start summoning the elements, can you like break down what this actually means within this context?
Yeah, it does sound a bit mystical.
Mm.
But in traditional Chinese medicine, the 5 elements, water, wood, fire, earth, and metal, they're really symbolic representations. They're different energies that are constantly interacting both within us and in the world around us.
Okay, so it's not that like our personalities are literally made of fire or water, right?
Right.
It's more about the qualities these elements represent.
Exactly. It's about understanding the interplay of these energies, how they support each other, control each other, balance each other. It's like this beautifully choreographed dance of nature, right?
Oh.
And our bodies are part of that dance.
Okay, I'm visualizing like a graceful waltz with a dash of kung fu. How do these elements actually relate to each other, though? Like, how does that work?
Well, imagine 2 cycles, the creation cycle and the control cycle. So the creation cycle, it's like a nourishing flow. So fire creates earth, earth creates metal, metal creates water, water creates wood, and wood creates fire. So it's a continuous loop of support and generation.
So it's like each element is kind of giving birth to the next,
Right.
keeping the energy flowing. I like it. What about the control cycle? Is that where things get a bit more, I don't know, intense?
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay.
The control cycle is about keeping things in check. So it prevents any one element from becoming too dominant. So in this cycle, wood controls earth, earth controls water, water controls fire, fire controls metal, and metal controls wood.
I see. It's all about maintaining that delicate balance, just
Yeah.
like in a healthy ecosystem.
Exactly.
But how can we actually use this knowledge, in our everyday lives? It still seems a bit abstract.
It's actually very practical.
Okay.
So let's say you're feeling anxious, right?
Yeah.
Anxiety is often associated with an excess of fire energy. Using the control cycle, we know that water controls fire. So incorporating water element practices like meditation, spending time near water, or even wearing calming blue collars can actually help soothe that fiery anxiety.
So it's like a roadmap for understanding our emotional patterns and then finding ways to create more balance.
Exactly.
That's really neat. Now, the sources also delve into the topic of trauma
Yeah.
and how it relates to all of this.
Mhm.
It feels like a bit of a heavier subject,
It is.
but an important one to address.
Very important.
Because trauma, I mean, in all its forms, it can really have a profound impact, right, on our energy systems, creating blockages, imbalances.
Absolutely. And the sources really emphasize that, it's not just about those major, like, life-altering events, right?
Right.
Even those seemingly smaller experiences can leave an imprint on our nervous system.
And disrupt the energy flow.
Exactly.
Wow. It really makes you realize how important it is to like approach healing holistically,
Yeah.
Addressing not just the physical and emotional aspects of trauma, but also that energetic impact. What do these sources suggest we can do to address trauma from this perspective?
They really highlight the importance of compassionate communication and touch as powerful tools for healing.
Yeah.
Creating a safe and supportive environment is crucial, a space where individuals can gently explore their experiences and begin to, release those trapped energies.
It's about creating that sense of safety and trust
Exactly.
so that healing can begin. Speaking of cultivating like a supportive inner landscape, the sources also mention the three treasures of Taoism.
Oh, yes.
Can you tell us more about those? They sound pretty valuable.
They are the three treasures: compassion, moderation, and humility. These are considered essential virtues for living a fulfilling life. And they're not just lofty ideals.
Right.
They have practical applications in our everyday interactions, our relationships with ourselves, even our approach to leadership.
Okay, let's unpack each treasure a little bit. So, compassion, that seems, pretty straightforward, being kind, understanding. But how does that relate to Taoism specifically?
Well, in Taoism, compassion, it goes beyond just being nice, right?
Yeah.
It's about recognizing our shared humanity, our interconnectedness with, all beings.
Okay.
It's about acting with kindness, not out of obligation, but from a place of deep understanding and empathy.
So it's about moving through the world with an open heart, recognizing that everyone is fighting their own battles.
Yes, exactly.
What about moderation? That one always makes me think of that saying, everything in moderation.
Exactly. Moderation in Taoism is about finding that sweet spot between extremes. Not indulging too much, but also not denying ourselves pleasure.
Right.
It's about living in balance, in harmony with the natural rhythms of life.
It's like finding that middle path, not going to any extremes.
Yes.
And what about humility? I think of it as, being modest, but I'm guessing there's more to it than that in the context of Taoism.
There is. Humility in Taoism is about recognizing that we are not the center of the universe.
Okay.
It's about letting go of ego, approaching life with a sense of reverence and respect for all things.
So it's about understanding our place in the grand scheme of things and not taking ourselves too seriously.
Exactly.
Right.
It's a powerful practice. And these sources actually suggest that true leadership embodies these three treasures.
Oh, wow.
It's not about wielding power over others,
Hmm.
It's about leading with compassion, moderation, and humility.
I love that concept. Leading with those qualities sounds much more effective and sustainable in the long run.
I agree.
But there's one more concept I'm dying to ask about, and that's Wu Wei.
Okay.
It sounds so mysterious and kind of paradoxical. How can you have action without action?
It is a bit of a brain bender, isn't it?
It is.
Wu Wei is often translated as, non-action or effortless action,
Mm,
but it's not about being passive or lazy.
right.
It's more about aligning ourselves with the natural flow of life,
Mhm.
like a leaf floating downstream.
So instead of swimming against the current, it's about understanding which way the river is flowing and moving with it.
Exactly.
But how do you actually do that? How do we cultivate that sense of effortless action in our daily lives?
It's a practice.
Right.
One way to think about it is to notice where you're holding on too tightly,
Okay.
where you're trying to force things to go your way.
Yeah.
And Wu Wei invites us to kind of surrender to the present moment, trust the process, allow things to unfold naturally.
So it's about finding that balance between like effort and surrender, action and allowing.
Exactly.
This is really resonating with me. Now, I'm curious about how these sources connect Taoist principles with the practice of yoga. It seems like a natural pairing, but I'm wondering how they specifically intertwine.
Yeah, they do. The sources draw these fascinating parallels between the yamas and niyamas, the ethical guidelines in yoga, and key concepts in Taoism. For example, ahimsa, the principle of non-harming in yoga, that aligns beautifully with the Taoist emphasis on cultivating a safe and secure environment, both internally and externally.
That makes so much sense. It's about creating that sense of peace and harmony, both within ourselves and in our interactions with the world.
Exactly. And satya, the principle of truthfulness in yoga, resonates with the Taoist concept of Zen, or authenticity.
Okay.
Both emphasize, living in alignment with our true nature, being genuine in our interactions, cultivating integrity in all that we do.
So it's about living a life that is true to ourselves and in harmony with the world around us.
Exactly.
I love that. What other connections do the sources make between yoga and Taoism?
Well, they also highlight this concept of sangha, or community, in yoga, and how it reflects the importance of community in Taoist thought. Both traditions recognize that we're social beings, right?
Yeah.
We thrive in supportive and harmonious relationships.
We're not meant to go it alone. We need those connections, that sense of belonging and support.
Exactly, exactly. And it's not just about the social aspects. The sources also explore how yoga's emphasis on self-reflection and discipline aligns with Taoist principles. Svahya, the principle of self-study in yoga that encourages us to examine our thoughts, our beliefs, our behaviors, right?
Yeah.
A practice that resonates with that Taoist emphasis on self-awareness,
Yeah.
cultivating a deeper understanding of our own nature.
So it's about turning inward and really getting to know ourselves, our strengths, and our shadows.
Exactly. And tapas, the principle of discipline in yoga, that connects to the Taoist concept of Tet, which refers to virtue or inherent power.
Mm.
Both emphasize cultivating our inner strength, committing to our practice, living in alignment with our values.
I love how these two traditions, while seemingly different on the surface, offer such complementary paths towards well-being and self-discovery.
They do.
It's like they're two sides of the same coin.
Yes, exactly. And it's not just about these, abstract concepts. The sources also delve into a somatic interpretation of the three treasures,
Yeah.
showing how we can actually embody compassion, moderation, and humility through our physical experiences.
Okay, now you've got my attention. How do we actually embody these virtues in our bodies?
Well, somatic compassion involves cultivating a kind and understanding relationship with our physical selves. It's about listening to our body's signals, responding with gentleness and care, respecting our physical limits.
It's like treating our bodies with the same kindness and compassion that we would extend to a loved one.
Exactly. And somatic moderation is about finding balance in our physical experiences. It's about avoiding extremes in our movement practices, honoring our body's natural rhythms, listening to its wisdom.
It's about finding that sweet spot between like pushing too hard and being too sedentary, right? Like listening to what our bodies truly need.
You got it. And somatic humility is about recognizing that our bodies are not separate from the environment, from the natural world.
Right.
It's about moving through the world with awareness, with respect, honoring our interconnectedness with, all things.
This is so fascinating. It's like we're moving from a purely intellectual understanding of these virtues to a felt sense of embodiment.
Exactly, exactly. And these sources also connect these ideas with the polyvagal theory, which is a modern understanding of the nervous system's response to stress.
Okay, the polyvagal theory. I've heard that term before, but I'll admit I'm a bit fuzzy on the details. Can you give us a quick refresh?
Of course, the polyvagal theory, developed by Dr. Stephen Porges, essentially describes how our nervous system, specifically the vagus nerve, responds to stress and regulates our ability to connect with others.
Okay.
It highlights three main states of arousal: hyperarousal, the window of tolerance, and hyperarousal.
Okay, so these states describe how our bodies and minds react to stress. Tell me more about each one. What's hyperarousal?
Hyperarousal is that classic fight or flight response.
Right.
It's when we perceive a threat, real or imagined, and our sympathetic nervous system kicks into gear, right? It floods our bodies with adrenaline and cortisol, preparing us to either fight the danger or flee from it.
So it's that feeling of panic, that racing heart, that surge in energy that we get when we're like stressed out.
Exactly, exactly. And it's an essential survival mechanism. But when it's activated too often or for too long, it can lead to chronic stress, anxiety, and a whole host of physical and emotional health problems.
Chronic stress is no joke.
No, it's not.
What about the window of tolerance? What's happening in that state?
The window of tolerance is that sweet spot where we feel relatively calm, grounded, and balanced.
Okay.
It's where we can think clearly, process information effectively, and connect with others in a meaningful way.
It sounds like the ideal state to be in. Not too revved up, not too shut down, just right.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And when we're in our window of tolerance, our vagus nerve is functioning optimally, helping to regulate our heart rate, breathing, digestion, promoting a sense of calm and well-being.
So the vagus nerve is like our own internal chill out button.
Yes, it is.
I need to figure out how to press that more often. What about hyperarousal? What's going on there?
Hyperarousal is essentially a shutdown response. It's our body's way of protecting us when we feel overwhelmed or trapped or unsafe. Our system kind of goes into this freeze state, conserving energy and going into survival mode.
So it's like that feeling of numbness, dissociation, or even feeling frozen, like what we might experience after a traumatic event.
Exactly, exactly. And while it serves a purpose in those extreme moments, when hyperarousal becomes a chronic state, it can lead to feelings of depression, exhaustion, disconnection.
This is all making so much sense. It's like a whole new way of understanding our responses to stress and how those responses impact our well-being. But how do the sources connect the polyvagal theory back to those Taoist principles we were discussing earlier?
That's a great question. The sources suggest that understanding our own unique patterns of arousal, whether we tend towards hyperarousal or hyperarousal or somewhere in between, is essential for cultivating those three treasures: compassion, moderation, and humility.
That makes sense. If we're constantly stuck in like fight or flight mode, it's going to be pretty hard to access compassion or find that sense of balance and moderation.
Exactly. By learning to regulate our nervous systems, we create the inner conditions that are necessary for embodying those virtues more fully.
So it's like we're laying the groundwork for a more compassionate, balanced, and humble way of being in the world.
Precisely. And the sources also highlight how these different states of arousal relate to neurotypical and neurodivergent experiences,
Okay.
emphasizing the importance of understanding and supporting neurodiversity in all its forms.
That's so important. Neurodiversity is a spectrum, and what might be calming for one person could be completely overwhelming for another.
Exactly, exactly. It's about creating environments and practices that honor and support the unique needs of each individual.
I love that. So we've covered a lot of ground here, from the five elements to the three treasures to the polyvagal theory.
Right.
It's amazing how interconnected all of these concepts are.
They are.
But I'm also curious to hear more about the specific yoga postures mentioned in these sources.
Yeah,
Can you
yeah.
tell us a bit about those?
Absolutely. The sources describe a variety of yoga postures that can be particularly beneficial for regulating the nervous system, releasing tension, and enhancing the flow of qi.
Perfect. I'm always up for learning new ways to incorporate yoga into my routine. What kind of postures are we talking about here?
Well, they highlight several categories of postures, including restorative poses, hip openers, spinal twists, and inversions,
Okay.
all of which can be incredibly supportive for both body and mind.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Can you give us some specific examples?
One posture that's frequently mentioned is constructive rest pose,
Okay.
which is a very gentle but powerful pose that involves lying on your back with your knees bent and feet flat on the floor.
I love constructive rest. It's so simple, yet so effective for releasing tension in like the lower back and hips.
It is. They also highlight child's pose, which is a beautifully nurturing pose that involves sitting back on your heels with your forehead resting on the floor.
Child's pose is like a warm hug for my nervous system. It's my go-to when I need to de-stress. What about those hip openers you named?
Yeah.
Those always feel amazing, especially after a long day of sitting.
Absolutely. The sources mention several hip opening postures, including butterfly pose, pigeon pose, happy baby pose.
I'm a big fan of all of those. They're so good for releasing tension in the hips, which is like where a lot of us hold stress and emotion.
Yes.
What about postures for the spine?
The sources emphasize the importance of spinal mobility,
Okay.
and they suggest incorporating poses like cat-cow, seated twists, and gentle back bends.
Okay, those all sound amazing. I'm already feeling more flexible just thinking about them. But how do we actually put these postures together into a sequence? Is there a specific order that's recommended?
That's a great question. The sources suggest several different approaches to sequencing depending on your intention for the practice. One approach is to move from yang to yin. So starting with more active and dynamic movements and gradually transitioning to more passive and restorative postures.
That makes sense. It's like giving your body a chance to warm up and then gradually wind down. What other sequencing considerations do they mention?
They also highlight the importance of creating sequences that target specific areas of the body, like the hips or the spine,
Okay.
addressing common imbalances and promoting a healthy range of motion.
So it's about tailoring the practice to like our individual needs and focusing on what our bodies need most.
Exactly.
Right.
I love that. And, they encourage experimentation and intuition in our sequencing,
Yeah.
finding what feels most supportive and nourishing for our, unique bodies.
I appreciate that reminder. It's not about, rigidly adhering to a set sequence, but about listening to our bodies and honoring what feels right in the moment.
Exactly.
This has been such an incredibly rich and insightful conversation so far.
It has.
I feel like I've gained a whole new perspective on well-being and how to cultivate a deeper sense of balance and harmony in my life.
Me too. It's amazing how these ancient wisdom traditions continue to offer such relevant and practical guidance for, navigating the challenges of modern life.
I completely agree. And speaking of navigating challenges, I'm also really intrigued by the source's discussion of how trauma can impact our information processing, especially the concepts of top-down and bottom-up processing. Can we dive into that a bit more?
Absolutely. It's a fascinating aspect of how our brains make sense of the world.
Yeah.
And understanding these different processing styles can provide really valuable insights into both neurodiversity and the impact of trauma.
Okay, I'm ready to have my mind blown. Okay, so remind us again, what are top-down and bottom-up processing, and why should we care? It sounds very, I don't know, computery.
Yeah, you're right. The terms, they come from cognitive science, but They're really describing something very human.
Yeah.
So imagine you see a blurry shape in the woods, right?
Hmm.
Top-down processing is your brain going, oh, that's probably just a tree stump, based on your past experiences without really analyzing it too much. It's efficient, but, not always accurate.
Makes sense. So we're relying on like our mental shortcuts, our expectations.
Exactly.
What about bottom up?
Bottom up is more like starting from scratch. So you'd be hyper aware of the shape's texture, its color, how the light hits it.
Hmm.
You're taking in pure sensory data, which is slower, but leads to a more accurate understanding.
So it's like our brain is a detective, like gathering all the evidence before reaching a conclusion.
Yes, exactly.
Fascinating. And the sources suggest that this relates to neurodiversity.
They do. They suggest that neurotypical individuals tend to favor top-down processing, while neurodivergent individuals might lean more towards bottom-up. But it's not about one being better than the other. It's just about recognizing those different ways of perceiving and processing the world.
That's really important. It helps explain why some people might be more sensitive to sensory input or why they might notice details that others miss.
Right.
They're literally experiencing the world differently.
Exactly. And this connects to trauma because, traumatic experiences can actually make our brains rely more heavily on that bottom-up processing. It's like our nervous system is on high alert, constantly scanning for danger, which makes it hard to relax and rely on those top-down shortcuts.
That's heartbreaking, but it makes sense. If you've experienced trauma, your brain might be wired to like focus on those potential threats.
Right.
It makes it difficult to just like chill out and enjoy the present moment.
Exactly. And it was a survival mechanism that helped keep us safe in the past, but it can make navigating the present really challenging.
Yeah, absolutely. So how does this all connect back to the Taoist principles and the yoga practices we've been talking about? Because it feels like there's a really beautiful synergy here.
There is. The sources suggest that practices like yoga, particularly yin yoga, with its long, gentle holds, that can really help regulate the nervous system, quiet the mind, create a sense of safety and grounding.
Okay.
And these specifically highlight postures like legs up the wall, savasana, and supported child's pose.
Those are some of my favorites. I can almost feel my nervous system like sighing with relief just thinking about them.
Right. And then, for those who might find stillness challenging, the sources also suggest incorporating more dynamic practices,
Okay.
like flowing sequences, shaking,
Hmm.
or even just walking in nature.
I love that. It's about finding what works best for, our individual needs and preferences.
Exactly.
And it's not just about the physical postures, is it? It's about cultivating that inner awareness and connecting with our breath.
Exactly. The sources, they really emphasize the importance of mindful breathing practices,
Hmm.
like the 6 healing sounds that we discussed earlier,
Right.
as a way to calm the nervous system,
Mm.
release that stagnant energy, and cultivate that sense of inner peace.
This has been such an incredible journey of discovery. We've explored this ancient Taoist wisdom, we delved into the intricacies of our nervous systems, and we discovered practical tools for, like, creating more balance and well-being in our lives.
It really has.
And I think the most important takeaway for me is that we're not alone on this journey. Whether we're seeking to heal from trauma, navigate neurodiversity, or simply live more fulfilling lives, these ancient traditions offer this timeless wisdom and practical guidance.
They do. It's about, finding those practices that resonate with us, honoring our own unique paths, and approaching ourselves and each other with compassion, with curiosity, and a deep sense of reverence, I think, for this miracle of being alive.
Beautifully said. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it sparked your own curiosity and inspired you to explore these transformative practices in your own lives.
Yes. Until next time, may you find peace, balance, and well-being on your journey.